Hello and welcome to this week's edition of More Insights and Strategy Game Time Tech Podcast. This is episode 17. Robert Kramer here with Melanie Brue. We're both VP and Principal Analysts, and my partner in crime here in Sports Technology Vertical. This week, we're going to be talking about Wimbledon, taking a closer look at the technology being used there, what's changed on the court, how it affects the fan experience, and the role of the IT providers, what they play in making this all work. We'll also take a look at some recent developments with the Premier League and Globant. Let's jump into a quick disclaimer, then we'll get going. The show is for information and entertainment purposes only. While we'll discuss publicly traded companies on this show, its contents should not be taken on investment advice. So, Mel, it's great to talk about sports. We love the innovation. It's a practical way to see in the field innovation in the sports dynamics and how it could be used in other industries. And you were at Wimbledon. How are we doing today first, and then we'll jump into Wimbledon.
Good. I'm glad for us to be kind of back on our podcast circuit yesterday with our Enterprise Apps pod, and so much catching up to do. And I feel like, it's been a hot minute since I was at Wimbledon, but we've both had a ton of travel and things. And so as we're going into kind of the next phase of the tennis season with the US Open and everything, still a very hot topic to talk about. So I was excited to be there. As you know, second year in a row that I went. And I think, the things that really stood out to me is like they just keep making more enhancements just all throughout the grounds. So everything like we talked about last year with AI-powered match previews on screens, real-time stats in the Wimbledon app. I've talked to people there at Wimbledon and also people just in the industry, and they say that Wimbledon app is just like one of the best apps in sports. But what really stood out, I think more so this year than last, was just how quickly you see like the automated highlights that are shown like right after key points. And it's not just for the main center court and court one, it's through every match. So I actually got a picture of myself, which I'll share at some point, with standing behind the guy with his IBM shirt on, and it said like for data purposes or whatever, just the guy who was collecting all the stats there in real time. So that obviously gets pushed out to everywhere else. You can see it even if you're standing in line, to get your strawberries and cream. So the other thing that really was a major standout, and I didn't experience this last year, but I had a friend with me this year, and we went through the queue experience. So if you're not familiar with that, Wimbledon they have people who are kind of like season ticket holders or whatever. But if you don't have tickets, you don't actually have to go into a secondary market. You can, but they're very expensive. You can get there either the morning of, the night before. Some people camp out all night long so that they can get court one and center court tickets. But you can just get in, and it's just as easy as being in a line. There was actually no line the day that we went, which was amazing. But the really cool thing about that is that gives you ground access. So you get to go around all the grounds. You can go to the restaurants. You can do all the experiences. They had an amazing Ralph Lauren store. There's a new Ralph Lauren cafe this year, which was so cool. But what you can also do is then you can put your name on a list. So as people leave the grounds from court one and center court, those tickets become available to you on the list. You can check your app at any time and find out where you stand. It's really cool, right? So you can check the app at any time and find out where you stand. So if you are thinking about maybe leaving, it was very hot the days that we were there. So you can see like, oh, well, I'm number 30 in line to get a center court ticket. I'm not going to leave. So they really make it easy for fans to have that experience without it being a fortune. The tickets are like $20, wow, which is crazy when you think about like being able to go to Wimbledon and center court for basically $20 or 20 pounds. But yeah, so fun.
That's interesting. So you're saying you put your name on a queue allows you to go in when people come out based upon, the first in, first out type of a thing.
Yeah.
But in that theory, then someone it's always populating those types of the center court or court one. I have been to Wimbledon, and I went 20 years ago or whatever, and it was the old school way, and all the people wore these big hats you couldn't see around them, and it was kind of fun. So the nostalgia is a big deal, and that's what I wanted to ask. How has AI changed the way Wimbledon analyzes the broadcast messages today as compared to 20 years ago? Has that nostalgia been pierced at all, or what do you think?
I feel like Wimbledon, even in comparison to the US Open, is still so much Wimbledon. It's still really that experience that you would expect from sort of this old school kind of experience. The technology hasn't changed that. I mean, there's definitely things, obviously, like the AI driven match summaries, things like that clearly weren't happening 20 years ago when you were there. But it generates those matches and the predictive models that enhances the TV broadcast and online coverage. But it feels like such an authentic thing while you're still there. So you can go and you can check the app, you can check the TVs they have all over the place. So if you do have just a grounds ticket, you have so much access to all the information. So that's really what it gives without ruining the experience at all. And interestingly enough, while I was there, I said hello to the IBM people who are there. They were not working on this year. They were not there, making sure. I'm sure there are lots of people in operations who are making sure things are running smoothly as they go, but they're already planning for next year.
Wow.
So, we can see what's in store for next year. But I think that without changing the experience too much, they've managed to keep it, I think, very much like the Masters, where there's just this nice traditional nostalgia that's attached to it that hasn't been overly AI'd.
That's a pretty interesting point, because you compared it to the Masters, and that, as I talk about the nostalgia, you don't want to invade that nostalgia from the Masters or the Wimbledon. But,
Right.
As you remember, John McEnroe and those he backed up his, anger or causing trouble, or maybe it was an act, or all of the above,
Right.
which was, part of, he backed it up by his talent. But that was part of what I've been saying with the nostalgia, that it gives us some excitement instead of it being a little, mundane. So, and that's the whole key. Do we want it to be both, or all, strictly only about AI, helping and dominating the sport? So when you look at what Hawkeye technology, the role that it plays with Wimbledon, how has it evolved, and is it an asset to the sport in Wimbledon?
Yeah. I think Hawkeye, what began as a line calling aid, has really kind of turned into more of an official officiating system. It really supports those automated line calls and the 3D replay capabilities, the same as like in baseball, that you can challenge a call. That provides accuracy. And I think that that's really important. And as we've talked about before, I have a son who's a pitcher. That kid works really hard. He's leaving in like a week or so to go to college and play baseball.
Oh, no.
I know. But when you're from the athlete perspective, they work really hard to get these things right. And so they deserve for the call to be right. At the same time, it does add that excitement and fun to the game when the calls are wrong. Now, as the mother of a pitcher, I don't like it when the calls are wrong. But certainly, sometimes you feel like your team got to win. But I do think it has reduced disputes, just because people know if they're going to say like, nope, that was out, they have to be 100% certain if they want to challenge that call, because the data is actually simply just there to show.
Yeah, and that's a good point. You want the call to be right, but some of those things like the John McEnroe, it's okay. But I think if they're limited in the amount of challenges they can have, we can still have both, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so how are the players, and really even the fans, we kind of mix a couple of things together. How are the players using AI and data for a competitive advantage? And how does the fan experience benefit with this technology and AI giving them more access?
So both the players and the fans, like you said, they get this real-time performance data. So shot placement, they've got the movement heat maps and even kind of fatigue detectors. So these are either fed through wearables or smart rackets. AI helps to kind of tailor these for the post-match reviews. Whereas way back when, players just relied on coaches and their stat sheets, and there was really far less situational feedback. But there's also, I think, a different side of that, which is if all of that stuff can be called and used, players can use it and coaches can use it as a competitive edge because they now can get data on other players. Just the
Great.
same way that it used to be like reviewing tapes and taking notes. Now they get much more information and they can get it quickly. It's like one of these things, I wear this Whoop, and a lot of times players wear Whoop or an Aura ring or whatever. Those platforms have to be incredibly secure. Because think about the data that you can get on a player. If that player's tired that particular day, if their recovery, as in Whoop language, isn't high, you may, as a competitor, you may take advantage of that and say, okay, I'm going to run him around the court even more, even though I know normally he can get those shots or she can get those shots. So there's definitely two sides of this where the data is there, but it has to be incredibly protected.
Yeah, that's some really good points. And I like the way this is going, and some of these examples that you just said. And the two of us always talk about sustainability and how really a lot of businesses are trying to go to be more sustainable, both inside and the compound of Wimbledon or the manufacturing plant, but also the way that they do business. So how does Wimbledon utilize AI to be more efficient and to adapt sustainability principles?
So everything from crowd management, food service forecasting, minimizing waste. So even just how they're using the courts. So you don't want to have a grass court exposed if it's going to rain, because then you got to go through this whole operational issue of fixing the courts and all of that. So I think it's so vast how many things that they can do and are doing. I think there's actually more that they could be doing. But even Wimbledon, they have cups that they say they have it printed on the cup rather than it being a disposable cup. They say this cup stays at Wimbledon, please put it here when you're done with your beverage. So they think they can forecast for things like that. How many drinks are going to be bought this day? How many, how can they use that? I do think that there's probably some more places where they can effectively be more sustainable, but there's definitely a big effort being done in that across the board.
That's really interesting. When you get into the food and beverage, based upon the amount of people capacity they're going to have, they should know how much food to make based on AI, which should be able to generate advanced analytics based upon some type of formula that it's coming up with. So they're not going to overcook or undercook's always okay too. So you don't have too much left over. But I think you want to get it more spot on, and that should be a really interesting point there.
Yes. Nobody wants to run out of strawberries and cream.
That's a necessity. Did you have it when you were there?
Yes, of course. Oh my gosh. It's something I think you hear about and you think like, how good can it be? It's that good. It really is.
It is. Wow. So how does Wimbledon use technology to reflect the broader trends in sports innovation, but also all these technology changes? Are they for the better, for the worse, or indifferent? What are your thoughts on both of that?
I think they're all positive things, right? I mean, I think if you look at how AI has become a tool for personalization, even for it to kind of blend these physical and digital experiences, people who aren't there can actually really experience everything that's going on the grounds. And then what we've talked about many times is that these big tournaments are they're tech labs. I mean, they are really a place where enterprise technology companies can prove out their technology in a really public setting, in a complicated environment, on a public scale. So I think, everywhere from football, golf, Formula One, they're all moving in the same direction of blending this data, performance, fan engagement, but also while showing their capabilities. It's not just slapping a logo on a billboard like we've discussed before.
Yeah, I would think everything that Wimbledon's doing is probably, as you tagged it, similar to the Masters. This advanced technology is really being used for the better to improve, but not take away. And to know, hopefully they do, that fine line to go far to make it improve, but not go too far to ruin the overall experience. And so it sounds like it was great. How was the weather for you there?
It was hot. It was really hot, which last year it was a little rainy. So, whatever, it didn't stop anything, but it was warm. But I think, to your point, like Wimbledon, just like the Masters, I think those two in particular have really managed to maintain this sort of elegance while still embracing innovation. And that hasn't been done through a lot of the other sports quite as in the same way. You see all the influencers and all the things happening at these sporting events, and it's just, to me, it's not the same. But as we talk about more sports partnerships, let's dive into our next big topic, which is the Premier League's headline partnerships. They've just announced partnerships, or recently announced partnerships, with both Microsoft and Adobe and others, but we're going to touch on these two because they're ones we know well, for the 25-26 season. So they're both about digital transformation, but they really, I think the interesting part about this one is that they touch on different parts of the fan and league experience.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's start with Microsoft. They signed a 5-year deal to become Premier League's official cloud and AI partner, which is pretty significant. They're making it the infrastructure backbone partnership to, really for fan engagements. And this isn't just about new apps. It's about migrating the league's entire digital operation to Azure, enabling features like the new Premier League companion powered by Copilot, which I think this is going to be great for Microsoft, and it gets them out there more globally, although they are obviously a big global company, but outside of the United States leagues. And I know they're doing a little bit more specifically to other teams. What are they? Manchester United, I think they sponsor them as well. So they're out there, and it's kind of a big deal.
Yeah. Copilot in this instance, I think they're making a really good move with this, because they're getting the consumer side of Copilot users and also the enterprise side, and it's really deeply integrated. So the AI assistant can pull from 30 plus seasons of stats, 3,000 articles, 9,000 videos. So it's a real big loop in real-time knowledge for fans. And then, of course, for fantasy league players and analysts, they get this instant access to historic and live data. And there's like voice and translation features, all kinds of other stuff. So it really does have a nice exposure from Microsoft point of view, as you said, with all of the infrastructure, but then getting these tools in the hands of users. That's always key. You've got to use it to, if you're using it for something like this, it becomes much more intuitive when you use it at work.
Yep, absolutely. So under the hood, this is enabling more of a granular personalization, telling what the fans see based on their teams and the players, and obviously the matches that interest them. And so for the league, the value isn't just on the engagement, but it's on the new data flows, which is a huge thing. So they can understand the actual what drives these fans, and modernizing everything from broadcasting, match analysis to internal workflows. And, again, I go back to when we grew up, and, this was nothing. We weren't even close to having things like this. And this is such a leap forward, even though this is happening all the time. But it's kind of just a fantastic breakthrough for sports to have these type of data availability, more fan engagement, and things of that nature. So I guess we can continue this and talk about Adobe.
Yeah. So moving to engagement, this is really hitting like the creator economy in sports. I don't know, I gave like a little bit of like influencer, but the creator economy is big, right? And they're of course going to be kind of infiltrating the sports world. But Adobe is now the Premier League's official creativity and digital fan experience partner.
Mhm.
So they're using Adobe Express and Firefly Gen AI tools that are directly integrated into the league's fantasy site, um, so that fans can create all kinds of things using Adobe Express and Firefly.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. So, like, if you're a fantasy manager, these new features where you can customize the badges and kit designs. But for the industry, Adobe's experience platform is collecting preferences across the channels,
Right.
to serve real time, personalized alerts and content. So you're moving beyond just the simple news and updates to location-based push notifications, curated match stories, and even targeted emails when you enter a stadium. I mean, that's probably a little too far, but okay.
Yeah, I mean, it depends on what you're getting it for, right? Like the stadiums and arenas where they know where you're sitting because your ticket is tied to your app, and if you get the right emails or push notification, obviously you opt into those anyway. But if you get the right ones, fans are really appreciative of that. You may have an offer for a a soda when you buy a hot dog, or a discount on your merchandise, because they know who you are and where you're sitting and what you're doing. And they even, in some cases, um, like at the what's the stadium in LA that is it the Intuit Dome? The Intuit Dome.
Mhm.
Um, they know how loud you're yelling because they've got the microphones and the speakers and everything near you. And so if you're yelling particularly for one team, they may offer you something for that team. So I think that is really what all of this boils down to, is that this is a play for both companies to own extremely rich sports data. So Microsoft's value is partly the platform competition with AWS and Google, Azure winning a tier one sports league. For Adobe, it's a major showcase of its experience cloud in a really unique, global, also emotionally charged context.
I do think it's all about the fans. It's to make it more convenient for them, more exciting for them, so they can actually get more out of it. Where before, most things that they wanted to get were manual.
Mhm.
So for two things stand out. The league now has two different data and AI stacks powering the fan interactions. So Microsoft for the infrastructure and stats, and Adobe for the content, personalization and creation, which the integration and the privacy management become non-trivial. But both partnerships convert the Premier League from static content publisher to a dynamic, which is a two-way digital engagement, which puts it ahead of most global sport leagues. So from the fans, like I was talking about, to get more out of it. So
Mhm.
it's a good win. The Premier League is always on the front, edge, from a technology perspective. That's really great just because they have an enormous amount of fans that they
Mhm.
deal with. That it's probably extremely important to do that. So we'll
Yeah.
see what happens in the United States with some of the leagues and what they how they match this.
Yeah. And again, all these companies are really looking at these flagship use cases to demo their tech, especially as they push deeper into AI,
Mhm.
which is a really good segue into our next topic, which is Globant's recent study, basically, that said AI or die.
Yeah.
I mean, like, okay, you got to appreciate the little PR push there, because it's like, wait, what? AI or die? Come on. It's a bit of a marketing ploy here, but it really is true that AI is right at the center of this major revolution in the sports world. It's everything we've talked about. It's how fans connect. It's changing things in how the sports ecosystem operates. So their AI or die philosophy kind of sums up this theory that if organizations want to stay competitive and relevant, AI is essential.
Yeah, it's more than essential, and I think that's really the play here. So Globant's work is in action with what is it, LA Liga, which is a Spanish league, and the Saudi Pro League. Their AI driven platforms are more they're more or less already handling the nuts and bolts, but this allows them to get into the game logistics, player signings, broadcast translations in real time. And we're doing something right now for one of our clients that talks about the broadcasting, which is extremely relevant. It makes operations smoother, taking matches to new fans around the world, so fans can really see it that they would never be able to see it. So the fan experience changes. It's more personalized. News is more curated. The engagement is going to be more interesting and meaningful. So again, going back to the fan experience, I think that's a big deal.
It's a big part of companies needing to look at AI not as a side project, not as an added thing. And everybody now says they're AI first, and that is to a very large extent marketing, right? But what Globant is saying here in their AI or die mantra is that it's their belief that AI is non-negotiable in sports, in pretty much in everything, but it's infused at every level. So shaping both the partnerships, internal culture, the fan experience, like you mentioned. So really what they're looking at is the digital transformation into AI and doing it quickly and intelligently.
Yeah, and that's really a good point, because what they're talking about is not to let AI run wild or to replace people. And we kind of talked about this a little bit in our podcast yesterday, but they're clear that AI should be working with the humans, and that collaboration and keeping things ethical and responsible, and protect to actually bring the fans and athletes and organizations closer rather than pushing them further away. So to your point, it's one of those things where AI is more of a helpful component and a tool, but it's something that needs to be used throughout, not just as an add-on. Kind of to your point as well.
Right. So AI is streamlining day-to-day operations, improving fan engagement right now, but I think we're still at the phase where not every one of these bold visions is fully realized yet. I mean, even look at IBM that's been working with the Masters and US Open and Wimbledon. They're still making improvements. Like I said, they weren't just sitting back watching, their glory. They're like, what do we need to do next? So I think this AI or die approach is really more about setting the pace and demanding the change, and really being willing to kind of experiment and go out there like T-Mobile did with the PGA championships. They did things that no one had done before. It's on a grand stage, and so they're taking a risk, but it is kind of setting that pace, and that's important.
Yeah, and I wanted to ask you one more question before we call it a day. But AI is obviously making sports more efficient and accessible and fun today. But do you think, and I'll answer this as well, is there a sport that you feel that AI can make more of an impact than it is right now? That I'm going to pick on baseball because I love baseball and I'm a St. Louis Cardinal fan. I grew up going to all the games. It was a big deal to me, with all those players that you can imagine that went through their World Series and things of that nature. I think baseball is a little dry right now and it's a little boring. And when I watch it on TV, it's not as exciting as some of like the Premier League or NFL football. And your kids play baseball. What do you think baseball needs, or is there another sport that you feel that AI would make more of a difference from an AI perspective?
So I'm on the total opposite spectrum of that. When people say that baseball is boring or like watching paint dry, I'm like, I don't understand.
Major League Baseball, the pro people.
No, I mean, even Major League. We go to an MLB game every chance we get. In any city that we're in, we figure it out and we go. Because I find the game to be incredibly fascinating. It's one of the smartest, most intelligent games. And I'm not just saying that because my kid plays. I really think when you think about how, like, I watch all of these replays and they talk, this high IQ play, they really have to be smart about the game. I
agree.
They have to be physical. They have to do all of these things, but they really have to be very smart about the play. Can AI do that for them? I don't know. unless it's like in their ear and saying like, oh yeah, let that ball drop because then you get a forced out at second and you can make a double play. I mean, those are things that these players have to really know. So maybe AI can assist with that a little bit. I'm not sure. But I really like baseball the way it is. And I kind of want to,
Okay.
stick to.
What about from the fan experience watching it from home? Because that might be more what I'm thinking, that it's not as exciting or nostalgic, because I use that word too much, but meaning like the National League used to have where the pitchers batted, it was even more strategic, and they've done a lot of things, speeding things up from the pitcher's time, the shortening games, and they've done a lot of things, but for some reason I'm not sure it's as solid as it was from a viewing perspective as years ago. So
Yeah.
does AI help that, I guess, in closing?
Yeah, and I think it is. I mean, if you look at like the home derby, what home run derby,
Yep.
T-Mobile did some things at the home run derby that you can see, like the ball speed, the trajectory, all of the things that you wouldn't normally see without kind of that. They use 5G to have the AR layover. So there's definitely some changes that are being made and some improvements that are for kind of the fan watching at home. And the Zoom replay center where you get a glimpse into the actual replay and the call that's being made, rather than just normally you would see like the umps, with their head over a camera reviewing, and they're going back to New York to talk to the head umps. But now you're getting a little bit more visibility into that, and that's through their Zoom partnership. So I think we'll see continual improvement in that experience for the fan at home. And I mean, like we were talking about, I don't know how much people want to see it being overly officiated by AI, because that's part of the fun,
Maybe my problem is the collective bargaining agreement where there's no salary cap, and then so now there's no parity like there was or is in other sports. So maybe it comes down to that and not AI. So
Yeah,
that could be
maybe.
part of my problem. But anyways, well, let's wrap it up, and thank all of you for joining. Be sure to like and subscribe to see more, and stay tuned for our next Game Time Tech and also our Enterprise Apps podcast. You can follow us on LinkedIn and X. We'll look forward to see you all soon, and thank you very much. Robert
All
Kramer,
right.
Melanie Brue.
Thanks.